Hi, Sam Liston coming to you live from ShipSummit 2026, and I am here with John Cutler, who is one of the speakers and coaches for the event. And you had an amazing talk yesterday where you talked a lot about the Avengers, which I love. I am still very impressed by your Superman voice. What did you call it?
Oh, the movie trailer.
Your movie trailer voice.
In a land where, like that one. I couldn't sustain it for the whole talk, but yeah.
No, completely understand. But super impressed by that. But what I really want to talk to you about today is the change in how we're delivering software and the teams needed to deliver software. So we know that the rise of the citizen developer is not new. We've had low code, no code solutions. We've seen people getting more and more involved, but with AI, this is really exacerbated, right? We're seeing those who've never touched code before be able to actually deliver apps completely on their own. Whether they're good and they're going to succeed is up for debate, but delivering it completely on their own. We're also seeing that the professional developer is delivering code faster and potentially working more in a silo. But I think that one of the big things from our research that we've been seeing is that skill gaps and complexity have been some of the biggest barriers that organizations are facing for delivering software. And with AI, that might be closing a little bit, but is it really?
Yeah, I think that that's in my research. It's one thing that crops up again and again is that the technology offers an amazing opportunity to reduce what I would call unproductive or unhealthy cognitive load. So you think anytime you're dialed into a task, you actually, a certain amount of cognitive load is important to do a good job. You're dialed in. In fact, if you let your guard down, you're more likely to make these mistakes, and we kind of go on autopilot. So we don't want people in autopilot, but we also don't want them sitting there pulling their hair out and just completely frustrated about what they're doing. So if you were ever a non-developer and you tried to set even up in a development environment, you'd probably hit that moment very, very quickly where the difficulty level of what you're doing hit that point where you couldn't make progress.
Absolutely.
And now the bar for that has gone down. You're able to make more progress before you hit that. The important point, though, is that people can get way ahead of their skis as well because you're lulled into thinking that there's so much progress. So that's what my research has been on a lot is what is the right amount of cognitive load depending on the skill level of the person involved? And then how do you engage other people in that activity to put the brakes on a little bit? So if I use the superhero analogy because if you early on in the Avengers movies, like Peter Parker is sitting there, is just discovering the skills. And in every superhero movie, you have that part in the beginning where they, flick their finger and suddenly a house falls down and they say like, oh, I didn't know I had that power. So that balancing the cognitive load for different people who are experiencing different things is really important. One side note on that is some experienced people are finding they're much closer to burnout at the moment because this is compressing their day into only the hard decisions. And so instead of, in most of our tasks, even if you're experienced, you go about your day, you futz around with tools. We've got video folks here. It's like half the time you're futzing around, getting things going. And then you have these moments of the important decisions, and then you give yourself a break. But now even experienced people are feeling that their days are sort of nonstop on hard mode because they're having to do that. So again, it's a cognitive load issue. So there's a lot of stuff to grapple with there. It's not as simple as suddenly now citizen developers can do everything and or experienced developers are superheroes. There's something in the middle that we're grappling with.
And one of the things that I'm seeing is, and I find this very interesting, that we have more of the citizen developers as we're talking about. We have more cognitive load on the professional developers. And now we're seeing job postings for AI code reviewers. So we're expecting these professional developers to become editors. They're not even getting to hone their craft. They're not being able to. So is that going to prevent burnout, or is that really taking away from the skills that they've spent so long actually perfecting?
Well, I think this is the one interesting component there is there's a whole skill area for understanding skills. So I work a lot with learning experience designers, or that's my background, it's in product and design. So you have learning experience designers, human factors specialists, people who think about behavior design. There's whole realms of design that grapple with this question about what the right amount of thing is, what's the gap? Is it a skills gap? Is it a physical gap? Can you just not be in so many places at once? What I think is unfortunately happening at the moment is that a lot of the advances are being made solely from the engineering community. and the development community, as you might expect with the technology, but there's sort of vast areas of expertise that can help us with this problem at the moment that aren't necessarily involved. So I would say TBD, because until those folks get involved, until the human factors folks or the people who understand and can analyze and research this can get involved, it's going to be difficult. And I think only just now you're seeing the first realm of books coming out from academics who understand those domains and the engineering domains, talking about what it might be doing to our brains. So TBD, I think it's a pretty scary prospect, actually.
I agree. I don't think that there's ever a chance that we're going to lose the need for those professional developers.
Right.
And I think that bringing them down to the level of just AI code reviewer is not really what we're looking for. I think that it's great. We're getting more and more of the citizen developers, bringing the product lines in, bringing the designers in earlier in this and helping to design those prototypes, get into the sandbox and help to solidify and harden the ideas before we actually ship them to production. And for me, this feels a lot more like open source. Like we're open sourcing all of our internal code because we're getting those viewpoints that we didn't previously have.
And open source is a great example of a community cognitive architecture, right? That is an approach that's evolved over the years, and it has its norms, and it has its cultural norms, it has its behaviors, it has its informal power hierarchies about like who's the maintainer, who's not, who's offering the things. And that's just a good example of ways that we know how to do things just weren't suddenly created in a year. These have evolved over decades or more in terms of the norms and how people function with them. So that's, I think the message for everyone is to be optimistic, but also just know we're in the very, 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 very early innings of this and things are still evolving.
Absolutely. And so we are here at ShipSummit. We are getting hands-on with vibe coding for everybody in the company. We have people in ops and marketing. We have those professional developers here. So for those organizations that haven't necessarily done something like this, like ShipSummit, where they're actually upskilling everybody in their team, what do you hope that they can take away from knowing that ShipSummit is here?
Yeah, I think that the model of this event is something that people should learn from. And so it has every making of a well-crafted learning experience. So that's my background, right? There's tracks depending on your experience level. There's moments where people come together to share information. The tables are set up in a certain way so that you're not just in single player mode in all the rooms. Some of them they are in single player mode when that's kind of important to be able to do it. And so I think that idea of can you create a safe space, a non-judgmental space that doesn't necessarily assume everyone's background one way or like I was chatting with someone yesterday and they hadn't written code in 10 years, but they're a very, very skilled engineer 10 years ago. And so they needed an entry point into this discussion, whereas you had someone who was on the marketing team who brings a ton of skill actually in information architecture and other content design and other things, newly experiencing these particular tools. So I think that that's a fascinating thing that in these types of events, it shouldn't just be engineers or it shouldn't just be your marketing team, really should be everyone. And then you need to create the learning paths that are accessible to people and then bring people in for those shared moments. Like when Kent Beck was up there, there was a great moment yesterday where Kent Beck was on stage, said, look, I've been doing this for 50 years and I'm having to question some things that I know. And then a very experienced engineer got up and hit the mic and said, like, how can you say that to us? We've been following your work for our whole career. Like, how can you say that even you are not questioning everything, but just putting a critical eye to things we know? You're not going to get that type of moment if you silo people off or it's very performative. You're only going to get that moment when someone like Ken said, I'm going to put a mic there, and I know that one of you will just be bursting at the seams to ask a question, and I'm going to invite you up there to ask it. So those moments are so important because that's what people remember out of an event like this.
Absolutely. So the takeaway is to do this event.
Yeah. Try to repeat.
Get
do this
everybody
event.
hands-on, make it down and dirty, and don't try to polish it.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. Your insights are always incredible.
So thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sam Weston coming to you live from ShipSummit 2026.